Welcome in, everybody. Hope you were all able to spend an awesome week with friends and family as we are in the heart of the holiday season. A new devlog on Christmas Eve? Name a more iconic combination. I'm visiting my parents for the next couple of weeks, so things might sound a little bit different than usual, but the show goes on, as they say. Look at that. This week, I dove headfirst into the aim down sight feature and actually ended up finishing most of it. The camera swapping and animation blueprint updates aren't in just yet, but the input logic and the character movement component changes are all implemented. That's why when we sprint, we are very suddenly slowing down. I am pressing the aim down sight button and the speed slows, but when I release the button, we go back to sprinting, as you can see. With that being said, though, let's get right into how we got there. First step was to create a new compressed flag in our character movement component. We did this already in week 5 when we were implementing Sprint, but I glossed over it because I had so much else to cover that week. Replicating data over the network every frame is an incredibly expensive process performance wise, so that's where these compressed flags come in. Instead of replicating certain movement variables normally, our character movement component compresses 8 flags, replicates them across the network, and then uncompresses them on the other machine. This results in a much more efficient replication process, which is why it is such an important feature. Half of the 8 flags are taken by the default character movement component, though, with one representing whether the jump button is pressed, another representing if we want to enter the crouch state, and then 2 more that are reserved for future updates to the character movement component. That leaves us just 4 to work with for all our custom movement modes, which may seem like a lot, but it definitely isn't. We used one in week 5 representing whether we want to sprint, and needed to use another one here to represent whether we want to aim down sight. My guess at this point is we'll use the other 2 flags and if we want to prone and if we want to pull our parachute. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, as they say. Once I had that flag working, I implemented some public functions on the character movement component that we can use when we are notified that the button for aim down sight is pressed and released. Speaking of our aim down sight input, implementing it was the next step for this week. I created some new input actions for start and stop aim down sight using the new input system. Again, I can't reiterate enough how much easier it is with the new input system to do this, as I can simply set the trigger to pressed or released in the mapping context instead of doing it inside of C++ like I would have to in the old system. Once that was done, I implemented our start and stop aim down sight input functions in the player character, and our input was firing successfully. Again, it's hard to see without the animations or camera transition in yet, but try to notice how the character is changing speeds when there is seemingly no other reason to. One thing that I need to implement in the near future is an exclusive action system. This will be needed to solve the issue where we are in the middle of a weapon swap and try to aim down sight. Currently, I just cancel out of the input if we are in the middle of a weapon swap, but this is definitely not going to work in the long term. Right now, we just have weapon swapping, but eventually we'll have things like reloading, throwing grenades, and much more where we will want to block the character from doing things like aiming down sight or sprinting. I'm going to try and implement an exclusive action system next week if I have time, because aim down sight will be the perfect way to test it. Speaking of next week, though, the main focus is going to be wrapping up the aim down sight feature. I already finished the animations I needed, but decided to not break the animation blueprint before I finish this week's log. Hence why you'll see the aim down sight animations next week instead of now. Additionally, I'll be implementing my camera swap system for aim down sight, which might end up being very complicated with all the different optics we have available in this game, but we'll see. But with that being said, I've been Steve. Thank you so much for watching, and have a happy holiday with your friends and family. Also, consider subscribing to keep up with the game's progress and liking the video because it really helps me out in the algorithm. I'll see you all next Sunday night.